We meet again.
Get ready to be totally stressed out,
Come on!
unappreciated,
What?
and ill-prepared.
Tell me you defrosted it.
No! It's our only option. Keep pushing!
It's the holidays. 'Tis the season to be jolly,
Are we there?
despite nothing going your way.
I'm allowed. I just can't do it all.
You're a mom. You were made for this.
Somehow, you'll find a way to be merry. The holidays.
Mommy, what are you doing?
Coming way too soon.
Hey guys, so this video was inspired by our friend Jill, aka Scary Mommy's hilarious new guide to surviving the holidays, which clearly we need.
At Megan and Poppy, you're supporting the Scary Mommy Thanksgiving Project.
Which helps struggling moms provide a Thanksgiving dinner for their families. So check it out in the info below. Thank you guys so much for watching.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Thanks.
All right, hello everyone, and welcome to Mom Talk. It is the holiday season. We are approaching this wonderful, joyful time of the year where renewal, light, peace, joy is coming and face to face with the other side being stressful, fury, anxious, and indecisive. And I thought, what better way to end this year but to have this wonderful Mom Talk conversation for the parents and conscious parents who are living peacefully and trying every day intentionally to bring mindfulness and peace into this holiday season. So my guest today is Roma Katar-Paul, who's a parentologist. She's the best-selling author of The Perfect Parent and one of the leading sort of peace learning leaders. And in her leadership, she has cultivated so much growth and tools of growth, and she's the founder of Tools of Growth. Therefore, you can benefit and grow with her advice and this conversation. And I'm so honored to have her once again on Mom Talk and to be talking to her. She's like a soul sister. Her and I have this telepathic, weird communication. And whenever I think of her, she's thinking of me. And here we go. We have a Mom Talk together. So honored to have you, Roma.
Thank you,
Happy
Nelly.
holidays.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. I think this is special for me too, right? Because I get to celebrate part of the holiday show with you, which is absolutely wonderful for, I think, all of us together and come together as a community and share with our audience here on Mom Talk.
Wonderful. So I know in my community, parents are oftentimes right around, I would say, Thanksgiving, getting geared up and ready for making decisions, for strategizing how to spend their time, how to spend their energy, their effort, their money, and what decisions to make that would be wise, mindful, conscious, and cultivate character and peace learning. And so we always start these conversations early in the season, and we talk about, okay, so how can we do better this year? And it's always about growth, right?
Right,
We're always evolving.
And I think as soon as that tree goes up over Thanksgiving, it's like there's this big aha. Like, here we go, here's my stress barometer is going to shoot up. And because that tree is a reminder of everything that needs to be done. And how am I going to fill that space underneath that tree? And there comes the list. And I think it's endless. So as much as, the holidays are about, love and peace learning and really celebrating that time with family, I think that there's an equal amount, if not more, of stress involved when it comes to, the to-do list that we all have to deal with during the holidays.
That's right, to-do list. We all have priorities. We all have expectations. Some of us a little higher expectations and some of us a little less expectation. I can tell you what I intentionally did this holiday season, right around Thanksgiving, after cultivating gratitude and thankfulness and actually writing a lot of thank you cards and calling people and being grateful, was deciding intentionally to not get so much this year and shift that into the spirit of giving, or looking for opportunities that we could fill and give and reach out and connect. So I was very intentional. I made a big announcement to the kids and the family, and I said, you know what, we're going to try something new this year, and this is what we're going to do. And surprisingly enough, the kids were all on board, which I was a little shocked.
That's amazing because, you have to share the age of your kids.
Yeah.
So we can actually put that in perspective.
Right. So the twins are 10 and the little one is 8. So at 8 and 10, they kind of had a little aha moment and look. But after I explained it to them and I said, let's just reflect on the previous years and what you've done and how we celebrated, just starting with, even going back to last year. And I said, why not try something new, something different, so that we can have a PeaceLearning experience. And
so I love this because I feel like everything starts and ends with parenting. When a parent adopts that attitude, it sort of becomes the air of what we're doing. And the kids come on board really fast. If you start the same conversation as, so what do you think? I'm thinking about less presents, to you guys, but more presents to others from you, from us, then obviously you're going to get that resistance from them, like, oh no, that's so boring, I can't believe that, but I wanted so many presents. But I think that as a parent, when you take charge and you set the tone and say, this is what we're going to do this year, then the kids are likely to jump on board much faster.
There was certainly a will and an intent that I think they were able to understand and get quickly. Behind it was also my storytelling. I started taking this compassionate narrative approach to storytelling about the different ways that different families across the world are celebrating and how they celebrate, and how many people have a lot less than you do, and how you are in a position of responsibility, and how it is so joyful to give. So unpacking the joy of giving and connecting it to, it's not that you're giving, it's that you have an opportunity to connect and share in joy. And what joy really, the real definition of joy is. And, as soon as the story was, evolving and repeating also, I repeated it a few times, I could see the spark in their eyes and that they were connecting, they were integrating, connecting the dots. Because we also had the fires, we had the floods, we had so many natural disasters that hit, whether it was around the globe or here locally, that I think the kids were ready. There was that readiness, there was that compassionate heart ready to open up, and then they were all on board. And it was hard because on some levels, for example, I asked them, they have some unopened toys stacked in their closets and rooms. I said, well, these are the toys that you can actually give to someone who will enjoy it, someone who hasn't had a Christmas gift. And initially they were a little resistant, but then they got it and they were enjoying it.
Yeah.
And they were so excited to bring more and give more and connect more. And so, it is parenting.
So I think it's really interesting that, we give our children this family view. This is what we are doing for the holidays. This is, your individual family unit, and then you expand that on to your grandparents and the second tier of our family unit. But I think, Nelly, giving this world view to the children of what does it look like outside of our four walls, outside of our family, that is so important. And I think it's imperative to create that vision for them, and it helps them expand their their world vision. And could be no better time than the holidays to do that.
Yeah. And the fact that you break out of habits, like who says you have to do the same thing or do it better and better every year? Actually, on the contrary, we're going to do less and less.
Yes.
And we're going to try something different. And I think they kind of liked it, and there was a lot of joy into it. And I highly recommend having these conversations early on.
Yes.
And starting the planning and just making decisions, because it is a very stressful time of the year where parents are under tremendous pressure with time, with money, with having to make decisions and keeping up with each other, because I know that's part of living in a community where the kids are constantly bombarded with social media and images of who's doing who and what and whatever. And so, we have to break those patterns for our kids.
Yes, and I think what we do with these patterns also is that we condition our children. If we hit repeat every single year and like clockwork, we're doing the exact same thing, then where's the growth, right? Where's the change?
Right on.
And we get our children attached to a stigma of how things should be celebrated, and it actually helps them. It actually does not help them expand into their own life, because what if their partners or their friends or their peers want to do something different?
Right.
Then you'll see our kids tugging and pulling, wanting to stay within their cocoon of comfort. So I think opening up this dialogue with the kids and finding change every single holiday, doing something different. And I'll share a great example. This year for Thanksgiving, we were unable to attend our usual family. It's at my sister-in-law's house, and we were unable to attend because we were going out of town. And immediately my niece said, "But how can you do that? Because this is our family tradition." And she took it personally, and we all as parents jumped in, and mind you, adults, children are 26, 27 years old, and so I took a step back and realized that this is an actual disservice to our kids that we hit replay every single holiday.
Yes.
That we don't do anything different, and we really leave no room for growth or expansion. And I think being able to do that for children every single year, doing something different, so that we stay open-minded and create even the holidays as a good platform for growth. Circling back to the worldview that you talked about, Nelly, I think it would be wonderful if that is the step this year. This year, because of all the natural disasters that we had, taking this worldview of what is the life of those victims, what is the life like of those children that were affected by it, and how can we take a worldview, forget worldview, national view, just knowing what has happened here in our community in the United Nations and the United States. How can we take this approach of empathy, of really looking at what is their life like right now? What are those kids doing, and what can I do to help?
So if you're interested in cultivating character, mindfulness, peace learning, and conscious living, today's Mom Talk is about that. We are going to dive right into living mindfully and with mindfulness, and what the concept of love, as Roma is going to unpack for us, means to many of us during the holiday seasons, and how can we cultivate love and consciousness and peace learning so that we have a more peaceful holiday season and we experience growth and we're proud of it and we're in joy of it and we celebrate it. So I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us, Roma.
So I thought it would be really fun to come up with something completely unique and different. Like how can we unpack, as you said, or unlayer the stress. There is so much stress, and it's at such a high level during this time of the year. It's almost a disservice to the essence of the holiday. It's almost a disservice to what's happening on the lunar calendar as a time of celebration, as a time of coming together, as the end of the actual year on Earth time. There's so many different things that get packed during this time of the year that are so worth celebrating, and yet I find ourselves so derailed, so far away from the mark on what the essence and what the feel should be. So I think a great way to de-stress during this holiday stress would be to remember the words love. I'll break it down and tell you what each one of them stands for. So if we look at the L, love, listen mindfully and intentionally. Oftentimes, we're not even listening to ourselves. So that first step starts with listening to yourself and really taking in that time of what is going on with me? How stressed out am I? How am I feeling right now? Because that first step of listening to yourself intentionally and mindfully will enter the interactions with your children. And this is exactly what the point that we want to make with the kids is to set the tone for a calm, for a peaceful, for a joyful holiday. So that first step starts from us. And then, of course, listen mindfully and intentionally to our children. Because when it comes to our kids, with this big list of to-do things, we're rushing through everything. We're not even listening to our children. So important that we take that time to listen to what they're saying. And a great way of doing that, because oftentimes as our kids are talking, our mind is interrupting, this constant thoughts and emotions, this roller coaster that we're on. So what we can do is use words like, okay, really, so that they can actually complete their sentences. We really want children to complete their thoughts and complete their sentences. And no other time better than the holidays to make this a practice. Kids are home. You can really put this into practice now while the kids are home, and then use it all year long, because you'll see the immediate benefits of listening mindfully and intentionally, not just to yourself, but also to your children, to your partners, to your family members, because that's the foundation of connection, is when we can make ourselves completely present, we can make ourselves completely available to the moment. So that first step is L for listen mindfully, and O for be open-hearted and open-minded. Once we listen mindfully and intentionally, then this O follows, the open-hearted and open-minded follows naturally. It's the expansion of the mind. When we actually, they say that hearing and listening expands your mind, because using this sense, our hearing sense, completely opens up our understanding. We're not blocking with thoughts and emotions. We're sort of leaning back from that train of emotions that goes by us on a moment-to-moment basis. So being open-hearted, being open-minded, and really making that effort with our children to display these sort of characters of how can I listen to what you're saying, absorb it, and be okay with it. 9 out of 10 times, we might be able to accomplish a listening part of it, but when it comes to the processing, to the intake, to the observation, and then to have that run into your action, that is what most parents have trouble with.
Yeah. And I have to say, from a PeaceLearning sort of communication perspective, assessing the others' style of communication and their level and where they are developmentally is really crucial, because you can have a child who is a great communicator and is able to listen, integrate, observe, and make sense of the conversation you're having with your child. And you can have another child who just learns very differently, has a different approach or different way of communicating that is not necessarily your way. So if you're more of a direct communicator and you're expressive and you're extroverted and you're social and you have advanced social skills, you're going to be communicating at a different level than someone who's perhaps developmentally young and is trying to integrate and have these multisensory experiences of communication. So it's really important what you're saying in listening to internally and externally to the message, and taking time and pauses. And I know it's not easy. Gosh, I know it's not easy. I catch myself several times a day because I'm distracted by technology, because I'm overexpanded. I'm doing a lot more than perhaps moms who were doing maybe 20 years ago. I think we're just in a developmental place in life, evolution place in life, where moms are growing. There's tremendous growth. We're growing. And in the growth, there's also a lot of regression that I think if we're not aware of, we could become less aware and conscious, and it could become barriers and hurdles to the growth we share in our family system. So there's an individual process and there is a collective family process that during the holidays. So for me, my intent of wanting to give and share and connect was internal. It was personal. And as a mom, so I feel responsible that that's part of conscious parenting to kind of cultivate that, to cultivate character and to speak up and not hold back and to have courage to say, we're going to be different. We're not going to have the perfect Christmas. It's going to be actually pretty,
a
messy.
new perfect Christmas. Yeah.
Messy and great. A new perfect.
Yeah, a new perfect Christmas.
Yeah.
And you bring up a really good point because I teach communication as well. That's one of my strengths. And in that, I talk about communication not being what a parent is saying to the child. But if you look at the base word, if you look at the word communication, and the base word is commune, is to come together. How do we come together in this conversation with our children? And coming together differently with different children is every parent's story. In every household, we have children that are dynamically different, not just slightly different, but completely different. And that adaptation has to come from the parents on how can I commune, how can I come together, because communication certainly is not a one-way dialogue where I'm telling you what to do. It's not giving direction. It's very different. Or I communicate effectively because I'm very clear about what I say. Communication is where you can make yourself adaptable so that the children or the other can actually understand and you can have a dialogue, not necessarily agree on everything, but at least open up for a dialogue and taking that pause, taking that breath to first, listen mindfully and intentionally, and then being open-hearted and open-minded. As you said, Nelly, that internal shift, being open-hearted and open-minded internally. And I think that once we expand our mind, then the heart naturally follows. So, and being open to change, there's so many, so many things that happen during this time of the year. You might have a new boyfriend in the picture from your children. You might have a partner that has changed for you. You might have a cousin who's bringing somebody you don't like. You might have children within the family that are conflicted. There are so many different dynamics to what comes to the plate. When we have these family get-togethers, which takes me to the V, which I love doing this because it's our PeaceLearning, right? So the V, which is be that vehicle of kindness, V for vehicle, so be that vehicle of kindness and compassion and love, and really be able to give these gifts that have no price tag. These are the priceless gifts of life, is that element of being there and being fully present.
And really, I personally have experienced a lot of joy in the simple things of the holidays, just being in your pajamas and cuddling around the fireplace, or well, not the fireplace now.
I know. Well, it's, 82 degrees today.
That's right. But the idea of cuddling with hot cocoa and maybe a cup of tea and just being together and spending quality time, I think that's really the bottom line for me of the holiday season. And also having these opportunities to connect and to be in communion with your community and to learn more about the growth and the relationships of the people you're in relationship and communion with, and having high expectations of peace learning, conscious living, and mindfulness. I personally find that very, very helpful. And I find it helpful with our children because when I do have these high expectations, Roma, and I know high expectations are not always healthy, and they don't always cultivate growth, but in instances where it's related to mindfulness, consciousness,
in the right place,
the
having the high expectations in the right place.
I find it so helpful. And I find that the children actually grow more, they are more attuned, more aware, And there were actually studies. There were several studies that looked at the teachers' expectations and how it's related to students' achievements. And I think
and performance.
And I think along the same lines that if as parents we have high expectations of these values that are important, value living and conscious living and cultivating conscious living and peace learning living and so forth, that really has a positive impact on their growth and how they hold internal high standards of themselves.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think most importantly, when we set those standards for ourselves, when we actually put those expectations on ourselves, it's a standard. It's a standard of living. And when you know you come from that place of consciousness and mindfulness and really make that your environment, then setting expectations on the kids doesn't need to be done at all because you're holding up those values. You're responding, you're showing up with those values every single day, every single chaotic moment, every single I'm so busy and holiday stress and I have a list of things to do. So in the end, it really becomes about how am I going to manage myself during the holidays? How am I going to take this opportunity? Because as red as the season is, I think it's a red carpet invitation to grow, really to come into yourself and know, okay, I've learned all these things over the course of the year. We're living in an era of mindfulness and personal development and personal growth. These terms are no longer alien to us. They are in the essence, in the fabric of life. Our children are exposed to it. So living up to that, how can I set myself up to respond in the moment? That is key, which of course takes me to the last E, so the LOVE. L for listen mindfully and intentionally. O for be open-hearted and open-minded. V for be the vehicle of kindness and compassion and give those gifts of that have no price tag, of course. And then E is embrace. Embrace the moment for what it is. This is what has showed up, whether it's good, it's bad, it's ugly, it's a happy relative, a relative who knows how to irk you and to get under your skin. Whatever it is, embrace it for, embrace the moment for what it is. Embrace life for what it is. And living in this present, living in this as is of acceptance and not expectations of a vision of how should this be? My vision of the holidays or the holiday dinner should be XYZ, where nobody should move from the table and we should all have a toast. And then everybody, like an orchestra, should move, towards the dessert area. Life doesn't work that way. So embracing life as it comes and really keeping that flow of energy in a way that's conducive to human nature, in a way that aligns with our human capacity to enjoy and joyful is such a key element of celebrating the holidays.
I love that. I love everything you say about love. And I love that that's such an acronym that we can all visualize and keep it in the forefront of our mindfulness practices and meditation and conscious living because it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Every element, as you described, cultivates peace. It cultivates consciousness, mindfulness, and it will help us navigate through these stressful times. And it is stressful. It is challenging, but it's also very, very joyful. So we need to just be reminded of it, to find our inner joy, to connect to our inner joy, and to let go the unnecessary angst and anxiety. And also, I thought it was pretty cool that my son, he's 10, the other day we were at a holiday party and there was a lot of commotion, a lot of excitement, said, "Mom, I'm starting to feel a little anxious." And the fact that he can articulate that, can talk about it, can
That's
express
amazing,
it,
yeah.
was pretty cool. And I thought, okay, in the midst of this amazing party and Christmas jolly celebration, he's actually tapping into his inner feelings. And even though he is experiencing a lot of excitement and a lot of fun, but he's also feeling anxious and feeling stressed, which probably is very much like a lot of us are going through.
Yes, it's in the air, right?
It's in the air.
Everything is in the air. We've got this high level of, angst because every emotion is a frequency. It's emotion, energy in motion. So that frequency that actually is output from our body, from our systems into the environment, now multiply that times the population of the earth, or even if we say just the US, imagine that angst that is in the air, the vibration of what's going on. And there are a lot of children that are intuitive. All of us are intuitive in being able to harness and pick up on that. But I was just speaking to a dear friend a couple days ago, and she said that I prefer to stay indoors during the holiday season. I try to get as much work as I can done much before, because I'm like a radar. I pick up on energy, and then that brings me down, and I start to feel really rushed and harried, and I can feel myself, getting upset at my son or getting upset at my husband for no reason at all, because I pick up a lot of this energy. So, and this reminded me of your son, of course, because clearly he has picked up on what's in the air and feeling that angst and anxiousness, considering that they're home right now.
Yeah, and it's great to have those conversations with them, to open up, be open, and be in communion with your children during these holiday days and moments and experiences, because we can learn so much. There's so much peace learning that happens within those very simple and honest and joyful conversations. I know that when we slow down and we are attuned and we listen, a lot of growth happens. We get to learn about each other. Like, I started listening to my son, and I took him out and I said, well, talk to me, what's going on? And in those conversations, he talked about how he's worried about his tryouts, and he's worried about this test that he has coming up, and that he won't be able to go to bed early, and that, so there's a lot of internal sort of dimensions to our children and ourselves that perhaps during the holiday seasons we get distracted and are losing our inner connection, because there's so much demand and so much festivities to connect to the external world. And so by being aware and finding that happy medium, that happy spot, that sweet spot where we feel joy, and we are also serving, in service and in connection with other human beings, I think will help us navigate through this season joyfully. Perhaps, that's my plan, my strategy, and I'll keep you posted. But I was sharing with Roma that the other day I went to the mall because I had to pick up a couple of things, and it was so hard to resist, right? There's so much
You get caught up.
stuff.
Yes, you
so
get
much
caught
stuff.
up. Yes.
You get caught up. And so I guess what would you suggest to moms who are feeling overwhelmed? I know moms of multiples, or moms who have blended families, or families who are maybe away from each other because they're serving in the army, or perhaps, the firefighters' families and so forth. I always think about so many families who have a mom or a dad or a partner who is giving, they're in service, they're working.
Yes.
This is a very busy time. Like the other day I was asking my hairstylist, I said, so what are your plans this holiday? And she said, well, I can't take any time off. This is the busiest time of my work, and so I'm working. And so just being mindful and being grateful and honoring those people who are in service, especially during the holidays.
During the holidays. I mean, I think, so if we were to go to that national vision that we talked about, or world vision as we talked about at the start, this would be a great thing to expose the children to talk to the kids about this, that we have these people on the front lines.
Right.
We've got, firefighters and law enforcement. These are people that their holiday time cannot be defined.
Right.
They don't necessarily get the day off or the time off. They have to work to protect the community, to keep our life safe. And how can we give to them? How can we give to their families? And with this technology that we have at our hands now, there's so many different opportunities that we can harness. And even in quiet, just sending a thank you. Think of how many people and children that we have on the front lines. Young people that we have on the front lines. So really important for all of us to share this space with our children, and to give them a real view of this is what real life is. Yes, we have our Christmas tree, we have our presents, and don't get caught up in the little stuff. and not getting caught up in the little stuff ourselves, as well as teaching our children not to do that, can easily be done if we do this, take a step outside of your own life and have this world vision of what is life like for these people, or everybody that's displaced by the fires in California here, and with what's happened in Puerto Rico and Florida. I mean, we can go on and on with what's happened in the country in the last few months.
So 'tis the season to be aware on finding opportunities to give, to share, to be grateful for, to cultivate peace and consciousness, and to find ways to connect. I think it's also a great time, because we do have more time for some of us, those families who have more time with their children, and children have opportunities to connect, that it shouldn't be all about traveling and self-indulgence and all those things that we all do, we're all guilty of. I'm the first one to raise my hand. I'm very guilty, but perhaps this would be a good time of the year to then stop those things and to take a moment, take a pause, and create opportunities to explore, learn, give, and grow. That's what I'm doing this year, and we'll see. I'll keep you posted.
Yes, it's, these commitments are great. And I think I also sometimes think about, as an educator, we give all these theories to parents. I've come up with these acronyms of, LOVE, and listen mindfully, be open-hearted, and of course, be the vehicle of kindness, and in the end, embrace life and things as they come up. But the big question then comes from every parent is, how do I apply this in the moment? While I'm in the outburst, while I'm in the argument with my child, how do I apply this and really take that path? Because intellectually I get it, and conceptually I get it, but how do I actually apply this in the moment? So it would be great to spend just a couple minutes on that. So there are a few tools that I would like to give you. Follow your breath. That's number one. When you follow your breath, it actually slows you down. A lot of times I like to not just follow my breath, but also keep my hand on my heart, because that gives me a perspective on where my own emotional temperature is, how fast my heart is beating, how am I responding to the situation. It puts me in check first. And the third thing that I do often is lean back. Is when there's a situation actually happening in the moment, I can feel the angst in myself, I lean back and take a deep breath again, keep my hand on my heart. So I either combine all three or do the three individually, because we do need that one moment to create that pause so that we can create a distance between the chaos that happens in our head and our behavior, our response, and our reactions. And taking that pause, taking that breath, taking that moment to manage yourself creates that distance, and then that becomes a segue into love, into the acronyms. That becomes a segue into listening and observing and being kind and embracing. And I find very much so what you did with your son. I thought that was beautiful. And I'm sure you naturally walked through all four of these different character traits that we all have within us to create that joyful moment with your family.
And, there are moments in which we lose it. We all do. We all have. And I think we're not so perfect. And I am very proud to say I'm not so perfect. So for those of you who are wondering, in those not so perfect moments when we lose our breath, we lose our attention and focus and mindfulness, and we lose consciousness, how do we get back to it? There are ways to get back to it. So the best, quickest way to repair is, if you lose it, then take a moment to do, there's this 888 count on breath that you can actually take a breath in on 8 counts, hold it in for 8 counts, and let it out. It's just like smoking. I always laugh about this with my friends, some of my friends who smoke. I say, it's just like smoking. Just pretend actually you're smoking. You're lighting a cigarette. You take in a breath for 8. It's an invisible cigarette, right? I'm not promoting smoking, okay? But I've never smoked, so I'm not a smoker. But I think it's the same concept. You take a moment, like you say, Roma, you take a moment, you pause, you move back, and then you take 8 breaths in, hold it for 8 counts, and release it for 8. And that pause, that intense pause, creates an opportunity for your brain to reconstruct, integrate, and get back to a responsive brain, a healthy brain, who is able to then repair and come back with, I'm sorry, and I messed up. Let's see what we can do about this. So become more solution focused. So if you lose it, no big deal. You have many, many opportunities. In fact, Dr. Gottman and other psychologists and sociologists have come up with this sweet spot, this ratio, the sweet ratio, the 5-to-1 ratio, sometimes 5-to-2, depending on the family dynamics and how securely attached you are, that you can actually make those errors. So imagine 1 out of every 5 times that you are successful in cultivating peace or cultivating consciousness or cultivating care, you can mess up. So that means about 20%, right? That's about 20%. So about 20% of the times, if you visualize and think about the 100% range, you can mess up. So that's a large margin of error because
and I
right?
also think that it's almost mandatory for us to mess up, because if we don't, how are we going to able to spot ourselves? In my book, I have a tool called Reflect, Redirect, and Reconnect. And it's on the same principles, because when you take that moment back to reflect, like, oh my God, I really messed up. What did I do? I had this outburst, or I used the F word, or whatever your angst might be. When you take that step back, then you're actually observing yourself. You're reflecting, how can I do this different? I don't like how I feel. So that is a huge inner growth exercise, and an inner growth exercise that should be, should be something that we have to be proud of, because it's moments like these that we can truly be proud of ourselves in these growth spurts that get facilitated because of such mistakes. So like I said, the holidays are such red carpet invitations to grow.
Yes.
And of course we're going to make mistakes. We're designed to make mistakes.
In fact, we're set up for it.
Yes,
So
we're designed
it's a great
for it.
opportunity
Yes,
to
it
look for,
definitely
because
is.
we're with a lot of families, there's a lot of family gatherings, a lot of opportunities to have conflict. And so I always say to my kids, I say, whenever you're having conflicts with your friends or there's conflict, also get excited, because that is an indication that there's a lot of growth coming, right? So you're learning, you're growing, you're evolving, you're cultivating, this relationship is getting stronger. And so now they get excited. I say, it's exciting. Yeah, you're in conflict. Well, get excited, because you're going to learn how to come up with new solutions. You're going to learn something new about your friend. You're going to learn something new about yourself. You're going to learn new boundaries. You're going to grow up.
Yes.
You're going to, so it's very exciting. So look forward to these holiday conflicts, I guess. What can we name them? Holiday...
Conflicts is a good word. I think they are good, because whether these conflicts are internal or external, they're there.
Yeah.
And when you bring so many people together and you bring such a large amount of energy together, then it's going to clash. So these clashes, these conflicts then become such great opportunities for us to look into ourselves, see where we messed up, and point this out to our children. And Nelly, circling back to what you just said, this is something that every parent should tell their children. Mistakes are opportunities for growth. When you stumble, when you fall, get excited, like, yes, I messed up. Take that moment to acknowledge the fear or the angst, whatever that might be, but then immediately look into, how am I going to grow from this? Where did I grow from this? And when we set that tone for our children, then we're actually setting the tone for a life that's committed to growth. Life, and that sort of life that is committed to growth is one that brings about joy and peace and true happiness, knowing that I have it in me. My inner core intelligence is at its strongest when I learn from my mistakes.
Wow, I feel like I'm growing right here next to my dear friend Roma. This is wonderful,
Thank you,
wonderful,
vice
wonderful. Such great content for all of you. And if any of you watching are interested in cultivating mindfulness, conscious parenting, and tools of growth, please reach out to Roma. She's on social media. Please give us your handles.
Sure, toolsofgrowth.com.
Yeah.
That's the website, and Tools of Growth everywhere, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, Tools of Growth everywhere. And my personal handle is at Roma Ket, so ROMAKHET, shortened my name so that we don't go through the Ket or Paul. So at Roma Ket, and yes, please reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to serve in any way I can right around the holidays here for all of us.
Awesome, awesome. And I know, Roma, you work with the school districts, and you're also very much tapped into the educational system and cultivating mindfulness within the educational system. So from that aspect and that angle, if there are any of you or community members who are interested in having Roma at your school to speak, to implement her program, and to just teach mindfulness, I know that many of you teachers and many of you educators, even watching all the way from Iran and the Middle East, are interested in learning tools of growth and mindfulness and conscious parenting. And so Roma would be a great resource for you. She's a dear colleague, and I learn every time I have mom talks with her. And
likewise,
yeah,
thank you so much. I feel the same. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So in closing, Roma, I want you to share a funny story. Do you have a funny holiday story that you can share with us? Or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, actually something that happened last night, and a big shout out to my son for a thank you in advance for your permission to share this. I haven't asked him, but I'm just thanking him so we can keep the air clear. So yesterday I got an opportunity to apply the LOVE, which we'll show you at the end in a graphic so that you can have something to take away with you. So what happened yesterday was my son came home, and he had had a very, very stressful day at work. Things were, our phone systems were down, and he was telling me, sharing all these stories with me, and how he had to spearhead the complete department and keep the emotions under control and all of that. In the midst of that, he needed something from the garage. He had stopped by home just for a minute, so he needed something from the garage. And I walked the garage with him. He couldn't find it, to help him find it. And I just let him vent it out. And as we were walking to the garage, he walked out, and there are two bikes next to the garage door that fell. So both the bikes fell, and he looked back and said, "Hi, Mom, are you okay?" And I said, "Well, you have some really strong energy going today," because, he was in that, what I was looking at as a negative mindset. And I said, "Well, we have some really strong outbursts of energy going today. So look what happened here." He said, "No, did you knock that down?" I said, "I don't think so, sweetheart. I think you knocked that down." So we're having this conversation, and all of a sudden, he completely let it loose and said, "You're pointing the finger at me, and you have no idea what kind of day I've had." And in that moment, I took that pause, I took that deep breath, I took a step back, because I'd already prepared for what I'm going to say today. So I thought to myself, this is the time, the LOVE, I have to do it now. So in that moment, I listened mindfully, and I observed with an open heart and open mind. And I knew that this was the moment that he needed me to be that vehicle of kindness and compassion and really the true gifts that are of value to our children. And then, of course, I embraced it. As he drove away, I embraced it for what it is. No judgment. He's had a long day. It was a very stressful day for him, and I knew that. And no judgment here. So it is what it is. And I responded the way I responded. And almost, 3 minutes after I soaked this message in myself, I picked up the phone and I called him and I said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that in a negative way." And immediately he said to me, "No, I was not being nice. I'm really sorry." Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a great moment, a great completion of what can happen in moments like this if we truly put our tools to practice.
That's right. So You all have a happy holiday season. Put your tools to practice. Cultivate love, cultivate peace, and live consciously and peacefully. We love you and wish you a happy holiday season.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Peace.